Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Refined Lad. Today I will be discussing with you guys how energy is transferred. This can be via relationships or being around certain groups of people. So the number one thing that I think very few people realize is how easily energy is transferred from one to another. For those of you familiar with quantum mechanics and quantum physics, I will be revisiting that later. Now the first saying that comes to my mind, an old saying comes to my mind, and that saying is birds of a feather flock together. Basically, the premise of that states, if I continue to surround myself with people who are not lifting me up, with people who are not encouraging me, perhaps this is people within your social circle that have compromised, you have value, you have a value system. And this is something that a lot of high value men have, because part of that value is not compromising, not willing to settle because they want to become the very best version of themselves possible. And in order to do that, they cannot settle. They must strive to be better and better with every ounce and fiber of their being. So let me ask you this. How often do we surround ourselves with these people that maybe in the past we would have never gave the time of day? Because the reality of this is most of us are picky about who, what, and where we allocate our time, especially those who consider themselves to be high value men. So when you're in this group of friends, right, I want you to think about in the past, maybe it was middle school, maybe it was high school, maybe you had these people affecting how you acted, right? I remember when I was 14 years old, I always kind of blended in with the groups, right? And especially in high school. This is my sophomore year of high school. And really the only people that would accept me were the stoners. So my first introduction into smoking weed was my sophomore year of high school. Now that being said, this is not the normal group that I would hang around with, but these were people who accepted me. And me growing up the way that I was, I had values, but I compromised myself to hang out with the partiers, with the burnouts, with the people that like to skip school, because I found that that's where my need for validation, right? My need to be accepted was coming from. Fast forward a couple of years, and obviously I was hanging out with the same people. We were skipping school. We were doing certain things to, the teachers to piss them off. We were kind of rambunctious. We were wild. We kind of did our own thing. Just as if you don't have a brotherhood that is supportive, if you don't have people who have your back, and maybe you're a girl, right? Maybe you don't have a sisterhood per se. Maybe you don't even have your own tribe that is doing these things to uplift you, to encourage you, to support you. The scariest thing is that these people affect us more than we realize. So a huge component of that is the concept of a soul tie. And if you're not aware of what a soul tie actually is, it's basically a spiritual bond or connection that is formed between either two people or multiple partners. Now the only caveat about this is depending on the type of soul tie, we are giving over parts of our soul, right, to this individual. And it can end up controlling what we deem, and for this context, I'm going to say the soul is representational of your mind, will, and emotions. So when we develop a soul tie with somebody, what we are basically stating is we have this spiritual transference, right? We have this bond. I want you to think of a long cord that is connected, right? I want you to think of like a long yellow cord that is connected to people, right? That is happening in a three-dimensional aspect of this world. And these can be formed via emotional, right? This can be formed physical through this can be formed physical through sexual intercourse. This can also be formed through just the type of bonds that we form. And the thing about a soul tie is think of it in a neutral aspect, right? It has a positive and a negative. The positive is that the right kind of soul tie will uplift you, encourage you, support you, build you up. The wrong kind of soul tie will destroy everything that you worked for, the kingdom that you're building, the dreams that you have, the type of life that you want to live. So emotional soul ties are formed through intimacy, a deep intimacy. And these emotional soul ties can also grow into physical soul ties. Because one thing that I can tell you guys right now is that women are made to crave intimacy. Now, a lot of these guys that are spinning the block, per se, know that aspect of it. Because if I can get a woman to get connected to me on an emotional level, I know that I'll have her. And although that might not be the right aspect of how to look at things, this just proves that it's in the wrong hands. So these negative soul ties can later be used to manipulate somebody. Okay? They can later be used to keep somebody in an abusive relationship. I remember a conversation that I had with a girl that I was working with, one-on-one coaching. And the premise of it was the first guy that she slept with was super abusive, treated her like absolute garbage. But she always found herself yearning when she was in the next relationship, and the next relationship. She was having flashbacks of them having deeper intimacy. She was thinking about her past partner while she's with somebody else. And I may be ashamed to admit it, but obviously I'm not a saint. So in my past, when I had my partying days and things, I had the exact same things happened. And I had to ask myself, why is it? Why is it that I'm still thinking this person that was absolutely horrible for my emotional and mental well-being? But I think of all these passionate times of romance, right? And the bottom line is, that is an unhealthy soul tie. This same girl tried getting away from him on several occasions before she got into a new relationship and had enough. They even took time off, and she still found herself returning to him. So you guys need to understand that soul ties, these physical soul ties, are so strong. And in the wrong hands, people know how to abuse and misuse this power. Because our bodies were created to have a partner. And I stand by that. Our bodies weren't created to have multiple partners. So think of Newton's law. To every action, there's a reaction. To every choice that I make, if I'm specifically designed a certain way and I choose to go against the grain, there's most likely going to be some form of a repercussion as an aspect of that. Emotional soul ties can be formed via anywhere in the world. Just sharing with somebody, right? They call it trauma bonding. Just sharing with somebody your insight, right? Sharing with somebody the deepest, darkest parts of yourself can form an emotional soul tie. Again, this can be healthy, it can be unhealthy. But if you look at it from the aspect of quantum physics, that there's so much in this world that's unexplored, and there could be multiple things happening all at once in a different area of the world. I want you to think about the concept of a mother's intuition, per se, right? You might have heard, or you might have even you might even be able to relate to the fact that when a child is in danger, the mother has like this sixth sense, right? I'm talking about like Spider-Man. Just absolutely knows at that moment, there's something happening with my child and I need to figure out what is going on. You have to keep in mind that our subconscious is tapped into the Creator, right? Tapped into God. So these thoughts that I have in my subconscious are going to project at some point. This is why it's so important to clean up the clutter in your mind. So there's a doctor, Dr. Daniel Amen, who wrote a book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And I want to share an example from that. Dr. Amen basically goes on to discuss that there is a neurochemical change when we sleep with somebody. And this is what he calls limbic bonding. For those of you who are in the manosphere, this would also be called pair bonding. When a man sleeps with a woman, he develops, and she has pair bonding hormones. So the very same thing that these guys are calling a genetic imprint, right? The man has left an imprint on this woman. That's really just a fancy way of saying this man has developed a soul tie with this woman, or maybe multiple women, Or vice versa. Maybe it's a woman who has been with multiple men and has developed a soul tie via that way. But what he goes on to say is that even if you are not looking, right? Let's say you're just hooking up with somebody, right? Good old hookup culture. We got a Tinder match, we're hitting her up, we go out for drinks, next thing you know, she's at my apartment, we're splitting a bottle of wine. We sleep together. Even if in that moment, in a passionate tryst of what I wanted, even in that moment, if that's what I wanted, I may not want it on a conscious level. Then I'm like, well, this was fun. It's nice meeting you. We'll probably never see each other again. Call it a one-night stand. That being said, despite my efforts to sleep with that individual and have no emotions, Dr. Daniel Amen basically states that no matter the cause, right? I might not have gone into this wanting to feel, but as a result, I'm still going to feel because there's neurochemical changes because of the way that our bodies are wired. Now, diving a little deeper into the psychology of it, women have a larger limbic system. So on top of a woman being masculine and feminine, this is really interesting. The limbic system controls emotional and behavioral response patterns. So this is why in situations where the man doesn't want a lot, maybe he's not looking for anything in a relationship, maybe he's looking for some fun, the woman becomes so invested physically, emotionally, and mentally in this man that she just met because her brain is literally wired that way. So on top of having masculine and feminine energy, we now have bodies that are designed a specific way. And I just want to say, I'm not here to judge anybody. Okay, I've made my mistakes in the past. I'm trying to be a better person each and every day. But the thing that we have to realize is we cannot negate the fact that the facts are there. The proof is in the pudding. The scientific, the anatomical, the way that the bodies are designed, and then you bring the spirituality into it, and it's really just the creme de la creme. We also have to keep in mind that men were created to procreate. So this man could spill his seed to Timbuktu, and that woman is going to be emotionally and mentally invested, not because of the spiritual soul tie, only the spiritual soul tie, but because of the way that her brain chemistry is wired. Another way to put this is we all have the song, "The Heart Wants What It Wants." There's that song by Selena Gomez, something about a heart, right? When in reality, it's not so much our heart, it's our soul. It's our mind, will, and emotions that are dictating our entire body and physiological responses. So, getting back to the physical aspect of these soul ties, the bond becomes even deeper and deeper the more partners that we have. Okay? So, for each person that I've been with, I give a piece of my soul, quite literally, to that person. This is why you might find if you slept with somebody who maybe they had severe depression, maybe they dealt with BPD, borderline personality disorder, and you have no symptoms, right? Maybe there's somebody you're in a relationship with and you guys, you love each other and you're sleeping together, right? Interestingly enough, there can be a transference of energy. I'm not saying that mental illness can be passed down, but what I am saying is that I can think of certain circumstances in my life and other people's where you've met somebody and they have had some sort of disorder, right? Behavioral mental disorder. And you have no history of it. And you can only look at, when you start looking at it through a spiritual lens, why am I having these issues when I've never had them my entire life? Just recently. And then it's like process of elimination. No brainer. Now another theory, this is just a theory that I have after doing some research. If masculine energy is meant to lead, right? To lead by example, to give, to penetrate. And feminine energy is to receive, to absorb, to take in, to nurture, to love. When you sleep with somebody, I want you to think about this real quick. How many times in your life have you met a woman especially that has carried all sorts of traumas that weren't even hers to carry? And my hypothesis is this. If feminine energy is to receive, and a man's masculine energy is to give, to penetrate, the sacred act of sleeping with one another causes her to absorb his traumas, causes her to absorb his emotions, causes her to absorb whatever baggage this man carries, and she's going to take it on into the next relationship. And I say women because feminine energy is to receive. A feminine woman is to receive. If women are created to be feminine, and we already know the biological nature, it only makes sense to me that she absorbs it, because I have met multiple men that have been with multiple partners, and they might have anxiety, they might have depression, right? But I have met women that have gone completely the other way. They're on SSRIs, they're on antidepressants, and they can't figure out what the issue is. And I genuinely think they're absorbing the man's trauma. The next time you consider getting intimate with someone without truly getting to know them, I want you to think back to this conversation. Remember, we're created in a specific image and we're spiritual beings. You must learn to protect your energy, because you could very well have it drained. And yes, there are energy vampires, especially in the physical sense. High value men and women are extremely cautious about who they give their energy to. So if you like this video, I want you to leave a thumbs up, comment below, make sure you subscribe. I release videos each week. Ponder on that. I'll see y'all next week. As always, stay frosty.